October 14th, 2024. The small town of Blackwood Falls was settling into another quiet evening. Streetlights flickered on, families gathered around dinner tables, and for 34-year-old Sarah Mitchell, it seemed like an ordinary night. A night that would soon become the beginning of a mystery that investigators would spend years trying to solve. Sarah was known throughout the community as a devoted mother and respected elementary school teacher. She wasn't involved in crime. She had no known enemies, and according to everyone who knew her, she was happy. At least, that's what everyone believed. At exactly 8:17 p.m., Sarah's phone rang. The call lasted only 47 seconds. Investigators would later identify the timestamp, but the contents of the conversation would remain a mystery. After ending the call, Sarah appeared different. According to her husband, she became unusually quiet, distracted, concerned, as though she had just learned something she wasn't prepared to hear. At 9:03 p.m., security cameras captured Sarah leaving her home, alone, without luggage, without explanation. She got into her vehicle and drove away. Nobody would ever see her again. The following morning, Sarah's daughter waited for her mother to return, but she never did. Hours later, panic began spreading through the Mitchell household. The phone went directly to voicemail. Text messages remained unread. Something was terribly wrong. By noon, police officially classified Sarah as a missing person, and almost immediately, investigators discovered something unusual. Sarah's bank accounts remained untouched. Her credit cards had not been used. It was as though she had vanished from the face of the earth. Then came the discovery that transformed the investigation. Sarah's vehicle was found abandoned nearly 60 miles away, parked beside an isolated forest road. The keys were still inside. But Sarah herself was nowhere to be found. No footprints, no witnesses, no clues, only questions. While examining Sarah's phone records, detectives noticed something strange. The 47-second phone call had originated from a prepaid phone, a phone purchased under a false identity. Then, investigators uncovered a hidden email account, an account Sarah had never mentioned to anyone, not even her husband. Inside were dozens of cryptic messages. Most appeared harmless, until detectives found one sentence that changed everything. It read, "If they discover the truth, neither of us will be safe." The email account eventually led investigators to a remote property hidden deep within Blackwood National Forest. According to property records, the cabin belonged to a retired businessman who had died years earlier. The structure had supposedly remained abandoned ever since. Yet recent utility records suggested someone had been using electricity there. Someone had been visiting. Someone had been hiding. And investigators needed to know who. When detectives arrived at the property, they immediately noticed signs of recent activity. Fresh tire tracks, recently cut firewood, food containers inside the cabin. Someone had definitely been there, but whoever it was had already disappeared. Inside the cabin, investigators found something even stranger, a notebook hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Most pages had been removed, only a few remained. The surviving entries appeared to describe meetings, dates, locations, and warnings. Repeated warnings. Warnings about someone Sarah referred to only as him. Who was him? Nobody knew. Not Sarah's husband, not her co-workers, not her closest friends. the notebook only deepened the mystery. Because every answer investigators found seemed to create 3 more questions. Meanwhile, media coverage exploded. News stations began broadcasting daily updates. Online forums filled with theories. Rumors spread across social media. Some believed Sarah had uncovered a dangerous secret. Others believed she had staged her own disappearance. But detectives remained focused on evidence, not speculation. Nearly 4 months after Sarah vanished, the investigation received its most important lead. The call arrived just after midnight. The voice was distorted. The caller refused to provide a name, and yet the information they provided would change the case forever. The caller directed investigators toward an abandoned mining area, approximately 40 miles north of Blackwood Falls. Before disconnecting, the voice delivered one final message. "You're looking in the wrong place." Then, the line went dead. 2 days later, search teams entered the area. The terrain was difficult. Rocky hills stretched across the landscape. Dense forest concealed much of the ground. Finding anything there would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Yet, investigators continued. Because, after months without answers, they had no choice. Then, shortly before sunset, a search volunteer noticed something unusual. Partially hidden beneath leaves and soil was a small metallic object. At first it appeared insignificant, but investigators quickly realized its importance. It belonged to Sarah. The discovery triggered a large-scale forensic search. For the first time in months, investigators felt they were finally getting closer to the truth. What they didn't realize was that the most shocking revelation was still ahead, somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the rumors, beyond the lies. The answer had been waiting all along. And soon, the investigation would uncover a truth far more disturbing than anyone imagined. For nearly 4 months, investigators had followed dead ends, false sightings, anonymous rumors, misdirected tips. Yet now, standing in the cold silence of the forest, they finally had physical evidence. The metallic object recovered from the ground was identified as a bracelet Sarah wore almost every day. Family photographs confirmed it. The discovery changed everything. Because if Sarah's bracelet was here, investigators had to ask a frightening question. Had Sarah been here too? The search area expanded dramatically. More officers arrived. Drones scanned the landscape from above. Cadaver dogs were brought in. For 3 days, teams searched every trail, every ravine, and every abandoned structure within miles. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, one of the search dogs stopped moving. Its handler immediately noticed the change. Something beneath the ground had captured the animal's attention. What investigators discovered next would become the biggest headline in Blackwood Falls history. Human remains. Partially concealed by time, weather, and nature itself, the area was immediately sealed off. Forensic teams worked around the clock. News helicopters appeared overhead, and the town held its breath. Several days later, laboratory analysis confirmed what everyone feared. The remains belonged to Sarah Mitchell, the missing teacher, the missing mother, the woman whose disappearance had haunted an entire community. But even after months of searching, investigators still did not know exactly what had happened. Whenever a mysterious death occurs, investigators begin with a simple principle. Look at the people closest to the victim. And naturally, attention turned towards Sarah's husband, David Mitchell. For months, he had appeared on television, asking for help. pleading for information, begging for Sarah's safe return. But now, detectives began examining his story more carefully. At first, David seemed cooperative. His timeline matched known events. His phone records appeared normal. Witnesses supported his account. But detectives eventually noticed small inconsistencies. Nothing dramatic, nothing criminal, just tiny details that refused to fit together perfectly. Then, investigators uncovered security footage from a gas station located nearly 20 miles from Sarah's abandoned vehicle. The footage showed a familiar vehicle, one that looked remarkably similar to David's truck. The discovery immediately intensified public speculation. Online communities exploded with theories. Some people became convinced the case was solved, but detectives knew better. Suspicion is not evidence, and evidence is what they needed. Just when investigators thought the case couldn't become more complicated, another discovery emerged. Inside the abandoned forest cabin, forensic technicians located a hidden surveillance camera. The device had been concealed inside an old smoke detector, and somehow it had gone unnoticed during the first search. The memory card contained weeks of recordings. Most showed nothing unusual. Empty rooms, silent nights, occasional wildlife outside the windows. But one recording immediately captured investigators' attention. The footage showed Sarah entering the cabin approximately 2 weeks before she disappeared. She appeared nervous, agitated, frequently looking over her shoulder, as though she believed someone was following her. Then she spoke words investigators would never forget. "If anything happens to me, the truth is in the journal." Those were the last clearly recorded words Sarah ever spoke. Investigators returned to the damaged notebook discovered beneath the cabin floorboards. For months, it had provided more questions than answers. Now, combined with the surveillance footage, it began revealing a hidden story. A story Sarah had apparently been trying to document. According to recovered notes, Sarah believed someone inside a powerful local corporation had been involved in financial crimes. Millions of dollars were allegedly missing. Records had disappeared. Witnesses had become silent. And Sarah believed she possessed proof. The mysterious phone call, the hidden email account, the forest cabin, the warnings. Suddenly, everything appeared connected. Investigators now faced a disturbing possibility. Sarah may not have disappeared because of something she did. She may have disappeared because of something she discovered. Months later, investigators announced a major breakthrough. The anonymous caller who had directed search teams to the forest had finally been identified. The individual turned out to be a former employee of the corporation mentioned in Sarah's journal. And according to investigators, that person had been secretly helping Sarah gather information. The witness revealed details that had never been shared publicly. Meetings in secret locations, threatening messages, attempts to silence whistleblowers, and a growing fear that Sarah had become a target. Yet despite the breakthrough, one crucial mystery remained unresolved. Who was ultimately responsible? And could prosecutors prove it? The investigation continued, but one thing was certain. The simple missing person case that began with a 47-second phone call had evolved into something much larger. Today, the story of Sarah Mitchell remains one of the most discussed mysteries in Blackwood Falls. Some believe the truth has already been uncovered. Others believe critical pieces are still missing. Perhaps one day, every question will be answered. Perhaps one day, every secret will be exposed. But until then, the final chapter remains unwritten. And somewhere between silence, secrets, and a 47-second phone call, the mystery lives on.